pollution's a lot better today, but you can't really tell from one day to the next. But with the Games almost upon them, there's a sense of a growing national pride here in Beijing at the moment. But despite the criticism and controversy from outside, the vast bulk of Chinese are clearly up for the Games. But at the same time, there's something very odd going on here. While the country's prizing open its doors to the West, a part of this brewing nationalism is virulently anti-Western. Here's Nick Lazaredes.
Within days of the Tibetan riots in March this year, the internet was flooded with pro-Chinese videos like these. But these homemade propaganda videos revealed only the tip of nationalist sentiments. A massive hidden army of young Chinese patriots is already waging a cyber war, unbeknownst to the West.
因为中国这么多人口，上网就有几亿人，对吧？为国家做一些贡献，这是网民们就是可以做的一些东西，作为黑客也是可以做的一些东西。
Patriotic computer hacking is on the rise.
It is becoming the new weapon of warfare. Low cost, high speed, and the scope of an attack is much greater than a traditional military attack.
Beijing is on the eve of Olympic glory. And tens of thousands of proud student volunteers are on the streets to help out visitors.
This is Wall of Smile, on which posted the smiling pictures that we collected from people who pass here, because we consider, smile is a kind of blessing to the Olympics.
For the volunteers at this kiosk, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to serve the motherland as a major turning point for China, a nation with a proud history.
在古代，中国就是一个文明古国，就是世界上比较强大的一个国家之一。我想在不久的将来，中国也会发展成为世界上比较强大的国家之一。
China's overwhelming Olympic pride is most evident among the so-called Generation Y, the almost 250 million people born during the 1980s, like 21-year-old nationalist student Wang To.
我觉得那肯定，因为我们是年轻的一波嘛，应该说中国的希望都在我们这儿，我们就应该扛起任务。看到没有？
Wang To and his friends spend much of their free time playing patriotic video games, like this one called Kill the Little Japanese. This generation are angry about China's treatment by the West and attempts to interfere in issues like Tibet.
我觉得任何东西都不能跟藏族跟奥运联系在一起，这没有什么连接在一起的关系。政治是政治，而且他们藏族就是一种文化的不同导致的那种分裂祖国啊，或者是一种思想不一样。
The March riots in the Tibetan capital brought an unforgiving response from the government, with a death toll estimated at around 100. Barred from entering Tibet, Western media reported what it could from afar. But as Western condemnation flowed, the reaction from many Chinese was swift and quite extraordinary. Homemade videos and the power of the internet spread their rage at lightning speed throughout China and around the globe. While many citizens relish the opportunity to lash out at what they see as a Western culture of China bashing, Others are taking on the moral defence of their motherland by targeting the Western media.
一个是选择性失明，另外一点就是说，这个他们把自己标榜得太高了，应该说是一种白人至上主义。
Just 24 years old, Rao Jin already runs his own media company and a popular Chinese website with a distinctly patriotic flavour. Its aim is to expose what he says is a culture of lies and bias in the Western media, including the constant criticism of China's human rights record.
所以，当西方的这些媒体或者西方的这个政客对奥运横加指责，甚至在火炬传递的过程当中制造很多障碍，这就不可避免的激发起中国人的爱国热情。
Provocatively, the young entrepreneur has called his website anti-CNN. And according to Rao Jin, CNN itself is one of the worst offenders. He claims they were caught red-handed using doctored photographs during their coverage of the Tibetan riots.
这是原来的照片，然后这个是经过 CNN 裁剪以后的照片。它的标题和这个图片很容易让人误以为是军车在驱逐这个示威者，但事实上他把这一片给去掉了，就是有很多这个暴徒向军车扔石块的这个照片。
And according to Rao Jin, the problem isn't confined to CNN. With China under a constant barrage of criticism from the Western media during the Olympic build-up, anti-CNN has been fighting back.
包括这个还是 Fox News 这是印度的警察在抓捕示威者，但是他仍然在用的说明是中国军队，这是非常非常明显的。然后 BBC 把这个就是救护车说成是这个重兵压境。
Right or wrong, Rao Jin's claims struck a chord in China, despite their own media's selective reporting and the government's mind-boggling steps to control the internet. Western experts have dubbed it the Great Firewall, but in China it's known by its evocative official title, the Golden Shield Project. An estimated 30,000 people working to block websites deemed unfit for Chinese viewing. But that doesn't bother young students like Wan Tou.
有的比我们小的一些朋友，就是他可能就是刚接触网络，被那种不良的思想就怎么说转变他的想法了，那这事儿后果是其实很严重的，我觉得很应该及时去封闭那些不良那种网站，应该去。
But China's firewall technology has an even more sinister edge. Using keyword recognition software, officials are constantly monitoring for internet usage deemed suspicious. It's a handy big brother tool to control dissidents and eager young nationalists alike. But the government was happy to give free rein to national rage, at least for a while. It was the Olympic torch relay's French leg, with repeated attempts to douse the flame, which triggered China's nationalist internet rage. Matters worsened when the French president hinted at boycotting the game's opening ceremony. For the Chinese, it was seen as a collective slap in the face.
我们自己表达，就像我们自己的母亲被别人羞辱了，我们做出正常的反应，这难道叫民族主义？我们现在的年轻人很敢于表达自己心声，而且我们有自己的方式。
The actions of young Beijing biologist Sun Fa were typical of the sense of national outrage. Using internet blogs and chat rooms, he called for a China-wide boycott of the huge French retailer Carrefour. Overnight, he had a massive response.
在网络上明确表示意向的，参与的大约有几千人，因为你可以有好多群，有20几个、25、26个群，每个群有10个人，每个人群至少有100个人吧，这就2000人。
But nationalism can often prove to be a double-edged sword, as the Chinese government is acutely aware. While it often fuels nationalist passions, its high-tech surveillance allows it to constantly monitor patriotic activists. There's nothing the government fears more than losing control of a situation. And with the Carrefour protest escalating, officials moved quickly to stop it.
至少我是对有些就有关部门来找去谈话，就是说了解我们这个活动的一个初衷、组织方式，然后呢，同时了解我们可能的参加的人数的一些具体情况吧。当时我跟他们达成共识，第一个一定要提出申请这样活动，第二个就是说在这样的情况下，希望我们就是不要有这样的活动，因为毕竟是奥运会，而且有很多的一些不明身份的人士会利用这样的群众性的活动来发起一些其他别有用心的一些运动，或者别有用心的一些活动。
These homegrown protests are significant enough, but what's causing deep alarm for Western security experts are an estimated 300,000 Chinese hackers and computer warriors ready to wage a cyber war.
主要就是当时 CNN 说家乐福这是一些个党独的事件，这是就是分裂祖国，对吧？对祖国的统一造成一定的威胁。然后这样的话，就是广大的网民包括中国人基本上都愤怒了。就说作为一个黑客爱好者，作为计算机爱好者，然后当时就随着大家一起通过网络，通过一定的手段来揭露这个事实。 还有一定的方法，就通过一定的技术，来就是给他造成一些压力。
This 22-year-old computer whiz kid is one of China's prolific new breed of hackers. Known by his hacker pseudonym of Yan Zhao, he offered Dateline a revealing glimpse into the secret world of Chinese hackers.
然后 Web Share 就是跟这种差不多，这就是一个 Web Share。 然后登录看，它这有一些服务器。
Yan Zhao was just one of several hundred Chinese hackers who launched an assault on the websites of CNN and Carrefour using a relatively simple technique of gaining entry through the system's weakest point, known as the web shell.
在这服务器上，我们可以进行一些属性用户账号，要删除、添加、复制，进行一些常用的操作。 拿下了 Web Shell 之后，如果想进一步的话，可以取得一些服务器权限，通过 Web Shell 提权啊，常见的一些就是原来老一些漏洞啊 ，FTP 提权啊，或者说 PCI Anywhere 一些就是远程管理软件，它存在一些漏洞，一些提权。
The result was CNN's online news replaced with web pages like this. Yan Zhao says hackers almost always work alone. But nearly all of them belong to one of the hundreds of different online hacker collectives in China.
技术比较高的，就属于老一辈的。当时他们说01年中美黑客大战的时候，那有一批人，大部分的时间都是在网内见。像说一小部分人，比如说几个玩的比较不错的，或者一个群体，他们有可能会聚会。他们像一些黑盟啊，像黑鹰啊，他们有可能自己会聚会。但是像我现在我们的小组也经常会聚会。
In contrast to the West's image of hackers as anti-government anarchists, Yan Zhao says the majority of China's hackers are staunch patriots, and their attacks on CNN and Carrefour demonstrate their willingness to defend and fight for China in a real cyber war.
当时有很多人嘛，很多人参与这次的行动。 有的人说他先碰的是先检测的是家乐福，有的人先检测 CNN。这如果说双方面的就是说战争的话，网络战争，我感觉如果说国家需要的话，国家需要的就是说需要我们就是这一些就是说在民间的一些，就说一些网民呢，或者说一个计算机爱好者需要我们的就是协助的话，有可能说大家一起努力，说自保不成问题。
As China's hackers become more sophisticated and brazen, Western security experts are growing fearful.
If you go in through computer networks, you could attack, for example, a power grid across an entire country. So for a tiny fraction of the cost and with much greater speed, you can do crippling economic damage and military damage by doing a cyber attack.
As one of America's top network security experts, Tim Bennett relies on intelligence services in the US and abroad, as well as his own forensic analysis, to track the audacious exploits of China's unofficial army of highly skilled hackers. Bennett believes China has a huge pool of government employees and freelance hackers at work, many driven by their devotion to the motherland.
When spurred by nationalism, you go beyond just the financial motive and you get into that deep emotional motivation. And that can lead to people to pursue this around the clock for as long as necessary.
Alarmed at the nightmare scenario it represents, the United States is funneling billions of dollars into a new cyber warfare command to protect against online attacks. And in Britain, Belgium and Germany, intelligence services have reported sophisticated Chinese attempts to hack government servers.
China has been very active in using this tool, this conduit, in order to gain economic advantage surreptitiously through industrial espionage, through hacking into government networks to obtain information as a defense tool.
Bennett says they're also suspected of trying to access a European power grid last year, while in 2003 a massive power outage shut down the northeastern United States.
The total cost of that shutdown, I think, was estimated at $6.3 billion for like this 12-hour power outage. What I've been told by intelligence sources is that it has been traced back to China. If it has that ability, then it might have the ability to go in and cripple financial networks, transportation networks, nuclear plants, chemical plants, all of which would have devastating effect.
With foreigners flooding into Beijing for the Olympics, some Western security experts are suggesting they leave their laptops at home. Last year, US officials were red-faced when they learned that their top commerce official was the victim of a hacking assault during a visit to Beijing.
The laptop of the US Secretary of Commerce was hacked into by the Chinese government in advance of the meetings, so that the Chinese counterparts to the U.S. Secretary of Commerce actually had his talking points and his briefing papers in front of them while he was sitting at the table.
When Dateline put Bennett's claims to the Chinese government, we received the following response, stating that computer sabotage was prohibited under Chinese law and that as a global issue, China was also the victim of hacking. Centuries ago, in imperial China, a system existed which allowed ordinary subjects to petition the emperor or his officials with their grievances. That system still exists today and draws tens of thousands of people to Beijing to vent their anger. They're called petitioners.
All right, so can you do some translation for me? Yeah.
Just seconds after I arrive at this meeting point for petitioners, the crowd starts to gather. I am about to witness an extraordinary scene of public dissent in this one-party state. Each of these petitioners has a different story to tell, but all are seeking justice in a China beset with inequality and corruption.
And we come to petition, and they put us in jail.
My translator, Wang Yong, has told them I'm a journalist, and for these forgotten people, I'm a fleeting conduit to the outside world.
西方民主国家为我们老百姓举行公道，为我们中国的人权进行呼吁。我们已经没有生存权了，被害家破人亡都是流离失所的。
我家的3公分就在这里在争了，100多天找不到了。他是个常备。在跟啥的？现在出轨，在小伙不解决。现在出轨，关键的各个机关打倒腐败和贪官，上下腐败一条龙。中国人是无人权，那个腐败的。我这么第一个，我不怕中国。
我们的民族要比这个共产党废了的，我们的人民都被他害死了。
胡锦涛的必须受到这个国际法庭的审判。
But in communist China, spontaneous gatherings of petitioners like this never last long. The petitioners' conduit was about to be cut off, and although technically under Beijing Special Olympic rules I was allowed to conduct interviews, the police were edgy, and state security officials arrived to film us and take notes from the crowd. For most of these petitioners, the reality is that within days of arriving in the capital, they are rounded up by the authorities and sent back to where they came from. But for the rising class of young urban nationalists like Wang Kou, awestruck by China's economic miracle, human rights are a secondary concern. He's keenly aware that in 20 years, when China is predicted to surge ahead of the United States as the world's largest economy, he and the rest of China's young nationalist generation may well be in charge, a responsibility viewed in patriotic terms.
我觉得爱国主义不光是我们需要来去想怎么爱国，我觉得每个作为中国人都应该去想怎么去爱国，因为咱们是黄皮肤的人，咱们觉得对于祖国来说，我们就是一个花朵，以后祖国的那重任都得交给我们，我们去把祖国建设更好。
Nick Lazaredes reporting there, and I think this must be the Paris end of Beijing. But have a look at this. Around the corner, Rolls-Royce. Just here, Lamborghini. Over here, Ferrari and Maserati. Now, if that isn't the new Chinese paradox, then what is? After the break, can you be both a communist and a capitalist in China at the same time?
And this, of course, is the man. Deng Xiaoping.
Yes.
It's all his fault.
I like it.
Was he your idol? Because he said it was okay to get rich.